I think every city needs to just kind of constantly work at is how do you keep your citizens connected to this place and feeling part of it? If you do that, you'll succeed.
That's the voice of Jim Penniman-Morin, Mayor of Cedar Park, Texas. He joins us today to talk about creating a downtown, which in this case is Cedar Park's new Bell District, anchored by the community's library, but with more phases still to come. It's a fascinating case study on what it's like to create a downtown from the bottom up and to create something special and unique to your community. You can learn more about this podcast at livabilitymedia.com. And with that, let's jump in. Thank you so much for joining us on Inside America's Best Cities. We're jumping right into our new season, and you're our first sort of traditional interview guest. We've been trying out a new format with some of our episodes where we bring on several people, but today the spotlight is all on you. So thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation. I enjoy the podcast, and I have enjoyed the new format too, like the one listening to the one on internships this summer, which is such an important topic. And so, yeah, I'm a fan, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. Well, we are super excited to hear more about Cedar Park and how you've kind of created your own downtown that didn't really exist before and the placemaking that's happened with that. So to kick us off, can you just start by talking a little bit about, why are downtowns so important? Why was this such a big priority?
Yeah, I think downtowns are important for the same reason like dining room tables are important to a family or a couch, right? Like at some point, every group of people has to have a place to come together, right? And the city at the end of the day is a group of people, whether it's Manhattan and New York City or, the smallest town in West Texas, it's your collection of people, and those people need a place to come together and know where to come together. There's a lot of advantages to having a very young city like we have, it was only incorporated about 52 years ago. And before that was really just kind of like ranch land north of Austin. And so we don't have a historic downtown like a lot of even very small towns have, the place that would have been their downtown 100 years ago.
Like the Main Street vibe.
Yeah, the Main Street vibe. And like there are some real challenges, in the 21st century for a lot of those small towns. But, it's just an important thing to have, right? And sometimes that comes out in small ways. Like we used to have 4th of July parades, but like, didn't really know where to hold them, so we'd hold them in different neighborhoods, and it's like felt like the HOA should be putting this on, maybe not really the city. And so without a downtown, you don't truly have a place for your community to come together and to know that they're in an authentic place. And that makes it harder for them to become part of that authentic place. I think that's just like the most important thing in so many parts of our society these days is like finding that genuine authenticity and like knowing if you were blindfolded and brought there, unblindfolded, you'd be like, oh, I'm in Cedar Park.
Yes, I love that. That makes so much sense. And you're right, they really are central to communities. And even sometimes when I don't know, in some ways, a lot of downtowns, like, aren't as convenient to spend time in places that are really car-centric. Like you have to figure out parking and, whatever, but people are really willing to do that because they want to be, kind of part of that vibe. So I definitely get what you're saying about that. And I did a little research on this and the website you all have set up, and it is beautiful. So I love what you're doing. I was like, this would be cool to see in person. But you've built it up around a library. So tell us a little more about that, kind of the library being the front porch, so to speak, and the anchor for this area. So what made that the place you decided to start and a central piece of this project?
Yeah, well, as we started looking at how to do this essentially redevelopment project, there has to be an anchor. What all the experts will tell you, our master developer, Red Leaf, who's done a wonderful job, certainly this was their advice. You got to have some kind of anchor, just like a shopping mall has to have an anchor of some, marquee store that will bring you there. A lot of times that's City Hall. But I think the real brilliance of a library for us is kind of twofold. One, people go to their library more than they go to City Hall, right? Like as much as I would love to have several hundred people at our council meetings, enjoying all my jokes, Like that doesn't happen, and anything outside like an old Western movie. And so, but people come to your library, and if you make it a really attractive place, especially in a place like Cedar Park that has a lot of young families, like you're going to have a lot of people going to the library, and we've had like 500,000 visitors just in the first 6 months since we opened it. And so it's become kind of a genuine tourist destination in and of itself. But that has to do with the other reason we did it, and that our city is very, very blessed to be benefiting from the knowledge economy. So we have a lot of brilliant nerds living in our city. Apple's campus is just outside, just across the border in Austin. We have a lot of Facebook employees and video employees. So for us, knowledge is what defines our local economy and so much of our kind of local culture. So it's only natural to have the library be that showcase for what is Cedar Park in the 21st century.
I saw on their website, it was on the FAQ, it said, "Are you offering tours?" And it was like, "We are too busy to offer tours
Yeah.
right now."
Yeah.
So that's a great
Yeah.
problem to have.
It's definitely been interesting. Like we knew it was gonna be popular. We ramped up hiring in advance, but like it got to the point where we had to hire back all our summer lifeguards this winter to help like police the kids play and book area, just because there were like so many children running amok. We got like a playground in there, toys, different kind of learning, playful learning, in addition to all the kids' books. And so it's a wonderful problem to have and one I'd take any day.
But programs for adults too. I mean, there was definitely a wide variety from what I could see, something for everybody, and a lot of programming too that you could access without necessarily having a library card, which I thought was neat too.
Yeah, and like that's I think kind of goes back to why the downtown thing is so important as well. It's like a lot of what we designed that building to be is a gathering space. So there's some big conference rooms. There's a lot of like small conference rooms that anybody who has a library card can rent for, 3, 4 people, whether that's for, I've seen, for Bible study groups, community service groups, and so like when you don't have that kind of historic downtown and like the historic, I don't know, downtown cafe that a lot of cities have, you got to build that place for yourself. And the exciting part is you get to build it fresh.
Yes. So the Bell District is the name this is going by. Is that just because it's a street name?
Yeah. So actually, the Bell Boulevard is US 183. That is a US highway that we actually has always run through the center of our town, and we actually moved it over a couple hundred feet in order to create the space for this district. But within our city limits, that was named after Kenneth Bell, who was our first mayor.
Okay. So that's kind of a full circle little moment with the name.
Mm-hmm.
So you talked a little bit with kind of the library anchor about the process and that you engaged a developer that helped with this, but tell us more about the process, because I know you're not done. So sort of where it started, where you're at.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really important thing that, like, if not everyone else who listens to this podcast probably understands and maybe just commiserate in that, like, everyone's children and cities grow up faster, right? And so, like, it takes a lot of patience to have your city, that you're building, right? So these projects that you're really excited about take a long time. The Bell District's been in the works for, I think, over 10 years. Actually like 12 years now, when they started first kind of doing visioning and community engagement about like how are we going to do this? What do we need to do? And so we still have several years left, before the whole thing's really built out. But as everyone else who also understands, listens to your podcast understands, is like when you build a city, like you're building it for forever. I'm a fan of Chuck Marone and Strong Towns put a lot of good information out, and he has this analogy in the original Strong Towns book about cities being like a baseball game that never ends, right? And like you would play the game different if it didn't end after 9 innings. And so that patience is incredibly important to make sure that you build all this engagement, and that you have this shared vision. And so, like, as much as I would love to claim credit for any of this, like, it's actually like 2 mayors ago, right? But everybody, I first met the prior mayor. I think it was the first time I ever met a mayor in my life, was when we had a public engagement session that the city staff put together to ask people like what they wanted out of this place? What do they want in the library? What do they want, in the Bell District in general? And it's really exciting, and that pays off a lot now because you're in the implementation stage, and like anytime you have change in your community, right? You've got concerns, right? You get people who don't understand, or they don't necessarily like what's happening to their neighborhood. But when you've had this years of public engagement, like the people understand the vision, they understand why it's good for them, for their property values, for their community. And what we generally are wrestling with at our city is actually kind of tamping down excitement, or just helping people understand, like, it's not going to be done next week. So,
Yeah, not exactly. So this whole process was, it sounds like, shaped by that community input
mhm.
and feedback. So was the library already located in this location?
No, no, we built a totally new library.
Okay.
And it's about maybe a mile apart. We're actually repurposing our old library into a community center as well. That's gonna be a little more like you can kind of rent space more periodically if you're in a dance class or a theater class, or we're gonna use that to also kind of try out different programming as well. But again, kind of satisfying our young community's real needs for gathering places.
Yeah, so the library's already there and open. It looks like you had the farmers market there and operating.
Hmm.
Lots of just like fun outdoor green space as well as indoor spaces that can be used. What else is that kind of what's already there in this phase?
Yeah, like that's the heart of it. I mean, again, so we've got a area with a backyard, which is bigger than most people's backyards, anyways. But a few acres that you can have smallish concerts and gatherings in. We've activated that recently with a kind of concert series on Friday nights, and food trucks. Eventually, they'll be surrounded by restaurants. Like if you go to the Bell District website, is worth taking a look at the renderings to see that vision. But then also, like, we invested in a world unique play sculpture called Bell, with an E this time, which is our state bird in Texas is the mockingbird, and so it's a giant mockingbird that young kids can play in, and there's none other like in the world. It's Monstrum's a company out of Denmark that makes those, and you'll see those in a lot of places. But it gives that real unique sense of place, and a lot of Instagrammable worthy moments. But like, so one of my proudest moments of as in my time I've been mayor is bringing my parents who live in Virginia still. They came to visit, and I remember we're walking past the Bell statue. Again, it's like 3-story tall bird, and there's like just like 40 families all just kind of sitting around, and the moms and dads are chatting with each other while their kids play. And my mom says, like, it's instant community is what you've built here, and like, it's always good to make your mom proud of you. But it's even better when it's something that you're just so proud of how your community is growing.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a really good way to describe it. And I know you're also going to be adding some housing as well eventually, right? So both some apartments, townhomes, all of that good stuff.
Yep,
Talk
and hopefully some
about,
offices as well.
okay. So talk about what kind of price point are those going to be at? Because I know, downtown is typically like where everyone wants to be. And so that can be, something that is at a little bit high. Is there attention being paid to that being accessible to a lot of different types?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know what you're good at and what you're not. I'm a big believer in like supply meeting demand, and obviously we're in a fast growing area. There's a lot of demand for housing, but so I think that's kind of our important contribution is actually just kind of creating that space to add another several thousand housing units, and particularly for us, we have a lot of single family housing, as you'd expect for like a Texas suburb, and a newish one at that. And so a lot of it has that kind of classic post-war development pattern. But so having some high density housing in a walkable neighborhood, and those two have to go together if they're going to succeed, right? Is be a big step forward in the future for us, and I think going to make it a lot easier than it currently is for younger 20 somethings to find a place to live in the city before they're able and ready to buy a single family home or a townhome. And then we get a lot of interest, and there'll be at least one building in the district that is covenanted for senior living. Because you have a lot of people that really love Cedar Park, loved raising their family here, don't necessarily want to keep mowing that lawn, and so they're kind of looking for that opportunity as well. But certainly it's we market rate, to your original question. But I think it's something that we keep an eye on in terms of like, are we doing what we need to do as a city to make sure that we're allowing enough housing supply so that, we don't become um, a place that excludes all the people we need to make our city thrive.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Obviously, that's something all places are dealing with right now in their own ways, right? Is having that housing stock and that it's something, people in a range of different types of jobs can afford to enjoy. I love what you said too about the just, age inclusiveness of kind of creating that all different people in different phases of life being able to enjoy that together. So,
Yeah, again, you think of a city as a collection of people and not a collection of buildings. That kind of leads to that natural conclusion. And one of the things that I get a lot of nods and agreement with when I've campaigned is wanting our city to be not just a place you raise your family, but a place your family wants to return to and stay in. Because that's real community. And while we won't be a small town anymore, um, the reality is like there's a lot of like small town feeling places, even in big cities, because the small town feel is what people want, and that's a connectedness. And the Bell District is an important avenue of the physical infrastructure of that connectedness, but the programming of the library and the new Recreate Center, our old library, part of that, like kind of social programmatic infrastructure. But it's something like I think every city needs to just kind of constantly work at is how do you keep your citizens connected to this place and feeling part of it? If you do that, you'll succeed.
so true. And honestly, it goes back, we were talking about our other podcast that we've just released about maintaining those young people, your students, your recent graduates. It's the same thing. And the narratives really changed for a lot of smaller places. It used to be kind of like, oh, well, you have to go somewhere else if you want to be successful. And now there is so much. Well, I think there's always been opportunity, but just doing a better job of promoting to people, what there is where they're already at and making that just as exciting.
Yeah, yeah, and I've really enjoyed some of your episodes of just kind of just ways to affirmatively do that instead of just like assume it will happen, which maybe is how it used to be, decades ago, or worse yet, and you see this more recently, just kind of despair that it's not going to happen. I mean, we're in an area here in the greater Austin area where like a lot of people are moving to. So it tends to be the problem we all deal with, and not have to lament. But, that it's still something that we need to stay on top of and are very aware of that, of like, let this be the place that it was for you. When I moved into Cedar Park with my family, we were, years and years ago, like I want other families to have that same experience in a place that's even better for it.
Yes. So it sounds like this is part of a larger community revival. So it's not just this downtown creation project. How do you see the momentum carrying over into other parts of the community or other things that are goals?
Yeah, and I think for us, it's somewhat revival in like that specific neighborhood, but like the challenge of Cedar Park is like as opposed to most cities in the country, like we're building anew in a lot of ways, right? So it's and that means you get a little bit of a clean slate. We don't have older buildings that need a lot of work or kind of have natural inherent character, right? So like did an inner city visit to Cary, North Carolina, which has a lot of similarities like economically and to Cedar Park, and just we did that earlier this summer, and like they have this like small old downtown from the small old country town of Cary that they're doing brilliant things with to kind of expand. And so we kind of take some lessons from that, but also just kind of know that like we have to start from scratch, and that's a blessing and a curse. So.
Yeah, that's definitely true. What would you say to your listeners here who are peers in terms of where should they start if they're looking at the same type of thing? Like we don't really have a central community gathering place, has that downtown feel. Where to begin?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at what you have, and like Cary was a good example. Our neighboring community of Leander was a good example. Certainly, like some other cities like Taylor and in Georgetown, and also in Williamson County, Texas here. Like they have like old bones, and sometimes it's just a block of what their old city was, but like you can use that, right? And so look what you have, but like this is going to be somewhat of an unsatisfying answer to to your elected officials, but it's always just kind of worth remembering. Like what makes you successful as elected official is listening and really listening. And so like listening what your people want and your residents want. And like ours wanted a unique sense of place. They wanted, a place to outside of Austin that they could bring, friends and family when they visited to. And, that came in a variety of different ideas along the way. I mean, the original thought was like for the Bell District was we'd put in a traffic circle and some like nice park benches and some enhanced like street lighting. And then like that became pretty clear, like, no, that does not a downtown make, right? But it's an exploratory process in the set of conversations that you got to have the patience and to use the ESPN word, to stick-to-itiveness, to keep at. But ultimately, it's what you owe your residents, and they'll be really thankful for it.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing. I know a lot of libraries have reinvented themselves and are doing cool stuff. I don't know that there's a ton that are what you described of clearing those kinds of visitor numbers and having to have some special monitoring of the kids section.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a real testament to like how thoughtful the city staff and the whole community has approached it. And like some of the things I'm just so proud of when I go into that library is like it was designed to try and minimize how many trees had to be taken down. Trees are a precious, slow-growing thing in Central Texas. And so, but what they did have to take down, they got milled. And actually, like when you walk in the library, and hopefully you share some pictures on your website if you can.
Yes.
There's this like 2-story wood wall. Like that's all pecan trees that have been there on the site. And their tree tags are actually like on a plaque on the wall. And that was a big surprise to me when I came for the first pre-opening tour. And it was just because the library staff was so excited about this for years, along with their engineering team and their architects. And like they've just found all these little ways to make this place personal to Cedar Park. And it's a testament to like we have great people and you empower them and let them run, and they'll come up with some amazing things, and your community will respond to that.
Yeah. I love that. And taking what people asked for, being able to execute on it, and then them being excited about it. It's a great success story. So we always close out our episodes with a fun question. And so I'm curious because we've kind of already been talking about one of the best things to do right now in Cedar Park. But the question is like, what's a bucket list item you would tell people visiting for the first time to do? So maybe if there's something else, like a restaurant that's a little bit off the beaten path that you love, or something to engage in.
Yeah, boy. Well, this is a tougher question and a fun one because now I got to decide who I'm going to make mad. But we have like amazing range of cuisine in Cedar Park. One of my favorite places is a Nepalese restaurant called Yak and Yeti. And if you haven't had Nepalese food, like it's an amazing kind of combination of like Chinese food and Indian food. And so like that's really cool. We of course have like great barbecue places like Style Switch. But the place that until this library came about, that people kind of felt like they knew they were in Cedar Park was we had the Brushy Creek Trail, which is before long will actually be a trail that goes along Brushy Creek for like the entire all the way across Williamson County. So like it'll be like 50 miles long, I guess, by the time it's done, and just in a few years. But like it's just like it's really again along a stream. It's bucolic, mostly shaded. And, it's just a great place to go out and get your steps in or, bring your kid on their bike. Same thing with like Lakeline Park. You go there and it's like you get people speaking. My wife commented like every time you go, it's like you hear 5 different languages, right? Because you got like people coming from all over the world to live and raise their families and work in Cedar Park. And that's a real blessing and something we're all really grateful for.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on to share the story.
You bet.
Thanks for listening to the Livability Podcast, where we take you inside America's best cities. At At Livability, we highlight the unsung awesomeness of small and mid-sized cities across the country. We also partner with communities to reach their target companies and potential residents through digital content and print magazine programs. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow, rate, and review this show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also learn more about us at livabilitymedia.com. Have an idea for an upcoming episode? Email me at aellis@livability.com. Until next time, from Livability, I'm Amanda Ellis, sharing the stories of America's most promising places.